Ladies and gentlemen, Capital G here. Welcome back. Bringing you a deck tech for Teneb the Harvester. We're actually going to be revisiting the Time Spiral block very soon with Time Spiral Remastered. Should be a best of all three sets. So Time Spiral, Planar Chaos, and Future Sight all kind of jumbled up into one gorgeous little draft set. And what a crazy time of Magic that was. So what I wanted to do here was kind of take advantage of the upcoming release to kind of look back at what Commander would have looked like if the only sets existed were everything up until Future Sight. So anything after Future Sight, we're not looking at it. Those cards don't exist as far as this deck list is concerned. That's our challenge today. So it's a good way of kind of looking at where Commander could have been then, because I'm using the modern ban list and modern rules. I'm not going back to the older rules or older ban lists. So we're going to be looking at what Commander could have been then versus what it is now, and the difference is actually quite stark. We can see what ideas worked exceptionally well then versus what works now. So, hope you enjoy the journey on this one. Let's start with Teneb himself. Teneb, we got a 6/6 flying dragon for white, green, black, and 3 generic. And whenever this deals combat damage to a player, you may pay a black and 2 generic to put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So, these days you don't really see Teneb or any of these other dragons. They're considered a little slow for our format as of late, but nonetheless, they were definitely a big thing back in the time. It lets you access lots of colors, and the abilities were pretty cool, and they kind of relied on dealing combat damage. So that's a lot of knocks against it in this day and age, but back then, something that can deal 6 to an opponent and steal cards from their graveyard, can't ignore it. So let's see what this deck would have looked like back in the day, shall we? We're going to start with our artifact draft with Felwar Stone. Add a mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. Hey, we're running a 3-color deck. Chances are we're going to match up our colors. We did have the Signet. The Golgari Signet is here. Lightning Greaves, we have Lightning Greaves. We do not have Swiftfoot Boots. So keep that in mind. Swiftfoot Boots did not get printed at this point. Mind Stone, of course. Yorzhov Signet, Selesnya Signet. Sol Ring, although these would have been a lot less common and a lot less easy to pick up at the time. And Talisman of Unity. Note that at this point we only had the allied talismans. We did not have the enemy ones. For creatures, obviously creature quality has improved greatly over the years, but we still have some excellent creatures that we want to bring back at some point. Starting with Akroma, Angel of Wrath, keyword Soup. Triple white and 5 for this 6/6 flying angel with First Strike, Vigilance, Trample, Haste, and Protection from black and red. Baru, Fist of Kroza, coming in from Future Sight. And I thought this is a pretty sweet add. Whenever a forest comes into play, green creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. Keep in mind, it says a forest comes into play. It doesn't say anything about the forest coming into play under your control. So if one of your opponents happens to be playing green, they're incidentally buffing your creatures. So kind of take note of that if they ever try to swing out at you. The Time Spiral block actually gave us some cool slivers that we can use, such as Basil Sliver, which says all slivers have sack this creature, add double black to your mana pool. So putting down a Basil Sliver is sort of a down payment on, say, casting Teneb a few turns early. Elvish Aberration, hey, you can cycle 4 forest, and this is also a 4/5 creature that can tap for triple green. Eternal Dragon cycles 4 planes, can bring itself back from the graveyard to your hand by paying 5 mana. or it's a 7 mana 5/5 Dragon Spirit. Harmonic Sliver. Artifacts and enchantments are definitely the way to go. So a card like Harmonic Sliver can be dominant, especially since we're running other Sliver creatures. We might be able to take advantage of this creature more than one time. Hypnotic Spectre. You don't typically see this 93-94 All-Star so much these days, but whenever this deals combat damage to an opponent, that player discards a card at random. So they could randomly discard, some big creatures that we can reanimate. Kami of Ancient Law. A spirit that we can sacrifice to destroy an enchantment. And of course, if one of our opponents is running more enchantments than artifacts, for example, sacrifice this, blow up the enchantment, have Teneb bring it back into play. Kokusho, the Evening Star. Now this was actually banned for a very long time in our format. When you're comparing Kokusho to some of the other creatures that I've picked out for this deck, the reason why is much more clear. Creature quality was not that good for the Commander format, not as good as it is now. So while today Kokusho, you see it, don't blink an eye. Back then people were asking, why are you playing that? It's banned. But there you go. An awesome card for this deck. Again, I'm using the modern ban list when I make this particular deck list, so perfectly legal here. The Crozan Drover. Creature spells you play with converted mana cost 6 or more, cost 2 less. That includes our commander, that includes our Kokusho, and some of our other big creatures. The Crozan Tusker. You can cycle this away, and when you do, you get to search for a basic land card and put it into your hand. So when you cycle this, you actually do the land search first, then you draw the card. And it also gives you a 6/5 beater in your graveyard that you can bring back. Lim-Dol the Necromancer. He's here for some redundancy. Whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from play, you may pay a black and a generic to return that card to play under your control. And if it's a creature, it's a zombie. And you can also pay a couple mana to regenerate a zombie. Sure. Magus of the Moat. Creatures without flying can't attack. The creatures that we want to attack with do in fact fly, so this reduces the number of creatures that can take a swing at us. Mindlash Sliver. All slivers have one. Sacrifice this creature. Each player discards a card. So this is a way for us to kind of cheat a big creature from our hand into the graveyard, and thus, using Teneb's trigger, a creature from the graveyard into play. The Noble Templar, 3/6 with Vigilance and Plane Cycles. Sadistic Hypnotist. Sacrifice a creature, target player discards 2 cards. When an opponent discards, that's fuel for us. Safi Edic's Daughter. Actually pretty good fit here. She can sacrifice herself, and when she does, when target creature is put into a graveyard from play, return it to play. So it's a good way to protect our commander, and we can actually recur it on our combat step. So we can always constantly protect our best creatures. Secure Tribe Elder. We have gone to visit. I can't think of it. But we have gone to the set where Secure Tribe Elder comes from. Kamigawa. There we go. I got there. So, Secure Tribe Elder is excellent ramp for us. The Scion of Darkness. This cycles itself for 3 mana. Or it's an 8 mana for a 6/6 with trample, but when this deals combat damage to a player, we get to put target creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. The fact that this can put itself into our graveyard very easily, just to be reanimated by our abilities, we can get around that mana cost pretty easy. Sad Robot, still played today. Comes into play, gets as a basic land card onto the battlefield tapped, and whenever this dies, we get to draw a card. Twisted Abomination, the last of our basic land cycling cards. Actually, it's not. I almost forgot about Wirewood Guardians. Gets a forest for us, and it's 6/6. Twisted Abomination is a 5/3, but it's black to regenerate. So once this does end up on the battlefield for us, very, very difficult to remove. And Yosei the Morning Star. Excellent dragon. This is a good way to lock down some of our opponents. When this dies, target player skips their next untap step, and we get to tap up to 5 target permanents that player controls. So tap down and essentially lock out one of our opponents with this dragon whenever it dies. Moving on to enchantments, Defense of the Heart is still played today. Wasn't as expensive then as it is now, but still an excellent card, especially since we have a lot of big mana cost creatures in this deck. Dragon Fangs, running the Dragon Fangs, the Dragon Scales, and the Dragon Shadow. Not only do these auras grant our big creatures, or any of our creatures, a keyword ability, and perhaps a power toughness boost, but anytime these are in the graveyard and we cast a creature of mana cost 6 or more, this will come back into play enchanting that creature. So these never really go away, even if we get quote unquote 2-for-1. Gaia's Embrace. There is a risk of a 2-for-1 here, but it gives the enchanted creature +3/+3 and trample, and for a single green we get to regenerate. So again, it protects us from most removal. Oblivion Crown. This gives us the discard outlet. So for 2 mana, you can cast this, add instant speed onto a creature, and then enchanted creature gains the ability of discard a card. This creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Running 14 instants, lots and lots of interaction. Instants are definitely a good way to go, with Ethereal Haze to prevent all damage that would be dealt by creatures this turn, so a white fog, a green fog, Harrow, which lets us sack 1 land and go get 2 lands we could put onto our battlefield. Hideous Laughter, this arcane instant. It says all creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn for 4 mana. And our creatures are much bigger than that, so if someone's wanting to go wide with tokens or elves or goblins, well, guess what? They dead. Frozen Grip. This one's kind of... I'm not sure how Commander players feel about this, generally speaking. For the most part, it's kind of fallen out of favor because of that 3 mana cost. Definitely cheaper, more flexible options exist. However, this having split second and removing any of our opponent's abilities to react to this is still vital. It still busts up infinite combos left, right, and center today. So I still think this is an excellent card to play in today's game. Mortify we don't see as much anymore, but it still destroys a creature or an enchantment, so it's a good fit for this list. Oblation. The owner of target non-land permanent shuffles it into their library, then draws 2 cards. Sometimes you just need to shuffle it away. It used to be that when a commander was sent to the library, it could not be redirected elsewhere, say the command zone. If you cast Oblation and targeted a commander back in the day, it went to the library. No ifs, ands, or buts. Today that's no longer true, and because of that, we don't really see Oblation as much. But the fact that this can hit any non-land permanent should still make this a relevant card today if you so chose to run it. Giving your opponent 2 cards, that's a lot of value, but chances are, if you're casting this and targeting an opponent's permanent, it's because you need to. Otherworldly Journey. It's one of those slow blink effects that I've always been a fan of. For 2 mana, we get to exile target creature, and at the beginning of the next end step, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control for +1/+1 counter on it. So obviously we don't want to use this on any opponent's creatures that we have stolen. But when we're protecting our own cards, we definitely can do that. 2 mana, dodge board wipe. Putrefy, another card that used to be more of a staple back in the day. Today you don't see it as much. Still an effective card. Destroy an artifact or creature. It can't be regenerated. Radiance Judgment. We can cycle this away for 2 mana, or we can destroy target creature of power 4 or greater. 3 mana instant. Rend Flesh. Destroy target non-spirit creature. Obviously we have better, cheaper creature removal spells these days, but cards like Radiance Judgment, Rend Flesh still strike me as pretty good. Slaughter Pact. Destroy target non-black creature. And at the beginning of your next upkeep, you pay 3 mana, and if you don't, you lose the game. This is one I haven't seen played in quite some time. Perhaps the non-black restriction is the reason why, because black is pretty much right behind green in terms of popularity of colors. Nonetheless, one heck of a get out of jail free card. Sudden Death. Target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn, and it has split second. This cannot be responded to. Swords to Plowshares. Now this is still an all-star. And actually getting a brand new printing with the Strixhaven. What do they call those? Arcane... Mystical Archive. The Mystical Archive in Strixhaven is going to have a new printing of this. Still an awesome card, obviously freshly printed in Commander Legends. And for good reason. Like, this card has been awesome since the game came out. Going on to lands, we're running 38. You figure because there weren't as many options for lands that's the reason why I'm actually running a fetch here. In this case, Bloodstained Mire. Search your library for a swamp or mountain, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Running the Pain lands, these are still good today. A lot of lands these days will have the basic land types in addition to the ability to tap for colors. Brushland does not have this, but it also never comes into play tapped. Cabal Coffers, so of course running the traditional Cabal Coffers Herbivore combination. Like I said, strong then. It's probably better now than it was back in the past, actually. Caves of Corliss, of course, another Pain land. Yujanjo Castle. Kamigawa gave us these excellent legendary lands that come into play untapped, tap for colored mana, and also give you a activated ability that may incidentally be good for you. In this case, it prevents the next 2 damage that would be dealt to a legendary creature this turn. 6 forests, 1 ghost quarter to destroy target land. It's, because, hey, we don't like Maze of If. Godless Shrine, the Shocklands. We have the Shocklands because we have already gone to Kamigawa at this point. Not to Kamigawa, but to Ravnica at this point. So yes, we do have access to the Shocks. Running the High Market, sacrifice a creature, gain 1 life. Good way to defend it from, say, control magic effects. The Llanowar Waste for the Pain land. Okino Tempo to the Grandfathers. This one is actually really, really good in this deck, being able to give our commander +1/+1. Brings it from 6 power to 7. Brings it into the 3 hit zone. Overgrown Tomb. Running 5 plains, 1 Polluted Delta to search for an island or swamp card. In this case, it'll definitely be a swamp card of some sort. Shizo Diff's Storehouse. Target legendary creature gains fear until end of turn. Now this grants our commander some evasion. If our opponents don't have a flyer that happens also to be black, they won't be able to block it. Strip Mine. Again, we don't like Maze of If. 5 swamps. Running the Tainted Field because we have enough swamps and swamp support that the Tainted lands will help us fix our colors over the long haul too. Tainted Wood as well. Temple Garden. We have Terramorphic Expanse, but we do not have Evolving Wilds. Keep this in mind. We did not have Evolving Wilds at the time. There's Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. The Windswept Heath lets us get a Forest or Plains card. And Wooded Foothills lets us get a Mountain or Forest card. And Yevmaya Hollow. Green to regenerate target creature. Now this one's... You don't see this one very much because it's actually a very pricey card. I believe it's on the reserve list. And for good reason. This is sweet, sweet land. Actually, it's not on the reserve list because that's Modern Horizons printing, isn't it? Yeah, that is Modern Horizons, so never mind. But an excellent land nonetheless. Running 10 sorceries, including the Cabal Conditioning. With our commander on the field, if we manage to cast this with Teneb on the battlefield, all our opponents will be discarding 6 cards from their hand. That's a lot of fuel for us. Damnation. It was freshly printed at the time in Planar Chaos. Planar Chaos took a lot of cards and shifted, like say Wrath of God in this case, and shifted it to another color. And Obviously some flavor tweaks, but mechanically identical otherwise. And so Damnation, of course, was one such shift from White's Wrath of God. Decree of Pain, 8 mana to wipe the board and draw a bunch of cards. Never a bad thing. Also being able to cycle it for 5 mana to clear out all the small creatures and draw a card. Lots of flexibility here. Demonic Tutor, the Mystical Archive Demonic Tutor that just got revealed earlier this week. Wow. So, I haven't bought a box of any of the recent sets because of, timing reasons. But just for a shot at that Demonic Tutor, I may very well get a Strixhaven box. Farsake, search your library for a Plains, Island, Swamp, or Mountain card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. This still sees lots of play today, of course, usually fetching one of the shocks, although we've since had a lot of other dual lands that have basic land types, including most recently the snow duels from Kaldheim. Kodama's Reach, search your library for 2 basic lands, put one onto the battlefield, one into your hand. Still played today alongside Cultivate. The difference being, we did not have Cultivate at this point. We only had Kodama's Reach. We also have Reap and Sow, which I think is an excellent add here, as this can go get a Cabal Coffers or an Urborg. Time of Need lets you search your library for a legendary creature card, reveal it, put it in your hand. You still see occasional play on this card. You don't see it too often, but I run it. It is an awesome card, especially if you have multiple legends in your deck, which, if you were to listen to the EDH Rec podcast, most decks do. Vindicate. This is a card that's at sorcery speed destroys any permanent, which I think is really, really sweet, but apparently these days sorcery speed is not good enough, and so we don't see Vindicate anywhere near as often except in some budget builds. Wrath of God, as per Damnation, wipe the board for 4 mana. And that is our look back at Teneb the Harvester. So that's what a deck would have looked like up until Future Sight. It'll be interesting to see what Time Spiral Remastered actually looks like. It's the first time that they've actually gone and revisited an old set or block in paper. They've done it with Amonkhet on Magic Arena, but they haven't done a printed set revisiting an old block and sort of tweaking it, revising it. I don't expect to see new cards, although we are going to be seeing a lot of really cool time-shifted cards, sometimes like newer cards in older frames, for example. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm very curious as to what this will look like, and hopefully it'll be a fun draft experience. In the meantime, we're going to bring this episode to a close. My next build, I don't know what it's going to be just yet. I have lots of ideas, of course, but just a matter of picking one and working on it. But it will be something a little more modern. But anyways, thanks for this trip down memory lane, folks, and we will see you all again next time.